3 days after my son's funeral, my daughter-in-law walked into his bank. She asked how quickly she could access everything: savings, investments, the house. What she didn't know: 6 months earlier, my son had quietly removed her power of attorney, and he signed it over to me. She thought she was about to take control. She had no idea he had already seen something coming, and she definitely didn't know I was about to see it too. Before I tell you how that happened, thank you for being here. If you're listening from somewhere in the world, tell me your state in the comments. I love knowing where we're connected from. And if stories about family, boundaries, and quiet strength mean something to you, consider subscribing. You're always welcome at my table. Now, let me take you back. My name is Margaret. I'm 72 years old, and I raised my son, Daniel, in a small town outside Columbus, Ohio. I worked night shifts for most of his childhood: hospital floors, fluorescent lights, coffee that tasted like cardboard. When he was 7, his asthma was so bad, I used to sit on the edge of his bed and count the seconds between his breaths. I kept an inhaler in my apron pocket at work, just in case. When he turned 14, I sold my wedding ring to help him buy his first car. It wasn't pretty, but it ran, and he cried when he realized what I'd done. "Mom, one day I'll take care of you," he said. I brushed it off. "That's not how this works," I told him. "You go build your life." And he did. He became an accountant, steady, organized, the kind of man who balanced his checkbook down to the cent. He married Ashley. She was beautiful, polished, always dressed like she might run into someone important. They bought a 2-story house with white shutters and a maple tree in the front yard. The kind of house you picture in holiday cards. Sunday dinners never stopped. Daniel showed up with groceries, fixed loose cabinet hinges in my kitchen without being asked, installed grab bars in my shower when my knees started complaining. Every Thanksgiving, he'd carve the turkey and grin at me. "Still your house, Mom." Ashley would smile beside him, but sometimes her smile felt practiced, quick, controlled. I told myself I was imagining it. They had one daughter, Emma, 16, quiet, watchful. She liked sitting at my kitchen table doing homework while Daniel washed dishes. Ashley was usually on her phone in the living room. "Mom's just busy," Daniel would say gently if I glanced over. I nodded, because I wanted things to be smooth. There were little comments over the years. Ashley hated Ohio winters, said they were depressing. She talked about warmer states like they were waiting for her. "He tracks everything," she once said about Daniel, rolling her eyes. "Every dollar, every receipt. It's exhausting." Daniel just laughed. "I'm an accountant," he said. "It's kind of my thing." 6 months before he died, something shifted. He came over alone one evening. No Emma. No Ashley. He sat at my kitchen table and stared at his coffee. Didn't touch it. "Mom," he said finally, folding and unfolding a napkin in his hands. "If anything ever happened to me, would you step in for Emma?" I let out a soft laugh. "You're 45, Daniel. What kind of question is that?" He didn't smile. "I'm serious." His jaw tightened, just slightly. And in that moment, I realized he wasn't asking out of fear. He was asking out of preparation. "For Emma?" I said. "Always," I answered. He nodded once. That was it. He didn't explain, and I didn't push. 2 weeks later, he helped me clean out my garage. 3 months later, he collapsed at work. Massive heart attack. No warning, no goodbye. At the funeral, Ashley cried beautifully. I don't say that cruelly. She wore black silk, held a handkerchief delicately in her fingers, leaned into condolences at just the right moments. Emma cried differently. Red eyes, swollen face. She gripped my hand so tightly my knuckles ached. 3 days after we buried my son, the bank called me. Mrs. Harris, the manager said carefully. Your daughter-in-law was in today asking about account authority. I lowered myself into a chair. What kind of authority? Full financial control. She mentioned power of attorney. My throat went dry. That shouldn't be active, I said. There was a pause on the line. Ma'am, your son revoked her power of attorney 6 months ago. The kitchen felt suddenly too small, and reassigned it, he continued gently. To you. I stared at the wall for a long time after that call ended. 6 months ago. The same month he sat at my table asking if I would step in. He hadn't been worried about his health. He'd been preparing for something else. I didn't know what yet. But I knew one thing. The life we thought was steady had cracks I hadn't seen. Whatever Daniel saw 6 months earlier was about to surface. But that peace was about to end. And I could feel it, right in my chest. Ashley came to my house that evening. No call first. No soft knock. Just 3 sharp taps on the door. She was still dressed like she'd stepped out of a meeting. Black slacks, structured jacket. Hair pulled tight. We need to talk, she said before I could even step back. I let her in. She didn't sit right away. She placed a leather folder on my kitchen table like she was presenting a case. I went to the bank, she began. Her voice was controlled. They told me Daniel revoked my power of attorney. I folded the dish towel in my hands. Yes. Her eyes lifted to mine. And reassigned it to you. There it was. Not grief, not confusion, something sharper. Did you know? She asked. He told me he wanted me to step in if something happened. She let out a short breath through her nose. That's convenient. I didn't respond to that. She opened the folder and slid a sheet of paper toward me. We have a mortgage, credit lines, investments you don't understand. This isn't some small checking account. I understand enough, I said quietly. She studied my face like she was trying to find weakness. You think this is about Emma? She asked. I didn't answer, because I was still piecing that together. But that wasn't the worst part. She straightened. I've already spoken to a realtor. The words landed calmly. Too calmly. I plan to sell the house, she continued. It's too big, too expensive, and there's nothing here for us anymore. Us. Emma hadn't even finished her school year. Her father's things were still in the closet. You're moving? I asked. Florida, she said immediately. Or maybe Arizona. Somewhere warmer. Somewhere with opportunity. Opportunity, I repeated. For Emma, she added, but her eyes flickered. I watched that flicker. What kind of opportunity? I asked. A fresh start, she said. She reached for her folder again. Daniel wasn't himself these past months. He was stressed, overworked. He made impulsive decisions. My chest tightened. The man who color-coded tax files made impulsive decisions. I kept my voice steady. He came to me 6 months ago, I said. He wasn't confused. Her jaw clenched. You think he didn't trust me? I didn't rush to fill the silence. She filled it herself. I put my career on hold for that family, she said. I managed everything. I deserve security. Deserve. There it was again. Not we need, not Emma needs. I'm not trying to fight you, I said gently. Her laugh was short. It already feels like a fight. She stepped closer. If you block this sale, she said quietly, I'll contest everything. I'll say Daniel wasn't mentally stable. I'll say you pressured him. The threat hung between us. It wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. I picked up Daniel's old coffee mug from the counter and dried it slowly with the towel. You can say whatever you need to, I replied. Her eyebrows lifted. I'm not blocking anything, I continued. I'm reviewing what he left. She stared at me like she didn't recognize me. Maybe she didn't. Maybe I didn't either. She gathered her folder and walked toward the door. Right before stepping outside, she paused. You have no idea what you're doing, she said. But her voice wasn't confident anymore. It was tight. When the door closed, I stood in the quiet kitchen. The refrigerator hummed. A car passed outside. I set Daniel's mug back in the cabinet exactly where it belonged. I didn't feel rage. I didn't feel panic. I felt awake. That's when I knew. I would not stay silent, and whatever my son had quietly prepared for, I was about to find out why. Because this wasn't just about money. It was about something she was afraid of losing, and I intended to understand exactly what that was. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't call anyone. I pulled out a yellow legal pad and sat at my kitchen table, the same table where Daniel had asked me if I would step in. I wrote down dates, conversations, phrases she used, opportunity, deserve, impulsive decisions. At 2 a.m., I made tea. I didn't drink. At 3 a.m., I opened the drawer where I keep birthday cards. Daniel's handwriting was steady, firm, not rushed, not confused. The next morning, I drove to the bank myself. The branch manager closed his office door before we spoke. There were several transfers, he said gently. Large ones. How large? I asked. He turned the screen toward me. 15,000, 22,000, 18,000, all within a few months. Labeled consulting or investment, he added. Your son restricted withdrawals shortly after. Did he say why? He said he needed oversight. Oversight. I signed the forms, requested copies. And when I got home, I laid every statement across my dining room table like puzzle pieces. The transfers weren't random. Going somewhere specific. Out of state, Florida. I picked up the phone and called Mark. He used to work with Daniel, forensic accountant, calm voice, sharp mind. Margaret, he said, when he heard my voice. I wondered when this would come up. My stomach dropped. What do you mean? Daniel asked me to review irregularities back in March, he said quietly. He thought there might be private real estate investments he wasn't aware of. Private? I asked. High-risk developments, out of state. A man named Richard Hale was involved. Richard, not Ryan. Richard. I closed my eyes. Did Daniel confront her? No. He wanted documentation first. Documentation. My son hadn't been confused. He had been careful. That afternoon, Emma came by after school. She dropped her backpack by the door and sat at my table without being asked. I made grilled cheese sandwiches the way Daniel liked them. Extra butter. She didn't eat much. She's packing, Emma said suddenly. Packing what? Boxes, papers, Dad's office stuff. I kept my voice even. Did she say why? She said, once the house sells, we're done here. Done here. Not maybe. Not thinking about it. Done. I reached across the table and squeezed her hand. Emma, I said gently, has your mum talked to you about moving? She says Florida will be better. That Dad wouldn't want us stuck here. I looked at the maple tree outside the window. Daniel planted that tree the year Emma was born. He dug the hole himself. He loved this house, Emma whispered. I swallowed. I know. That night, I stood in Daniel's living room alone. The couch still had his blanket folded over one arm. I picked it up, pressed it to my face. It still smelled faintly like his cologne. I didn't feel fury. I felt protective. There's a difference. If Ashley wanted to move fast, I would move precisely. If she wanted urgency, I would choose patience. If my son had started gathering proof, I would finish what he began. If you're still listening, thank you. Some truths are slow. And the next one was heavy. That's when I began to think, very carefully, not emotionally, strategically. Because whatever she was rushing toward, I intended to slow down. And slowing someone down can change everything. I didn't confront her. Not about the transfers. Not about Richard Hale. Not about Florida. I let her believe I was still catching up. The following Sunday, she invited me over. Coffee was already poured when I arrived. Boxes were stacked neatly near the staircase now, labelled, organised, moving forward. "We need to keep this smooth," she said, stirring her cup without drinking. "For Emma." "Of course," I replied. She studied me, waiting for an argument. I gave her none. "I've spoken to another realtor," she added. "The market is strong. We'd be foolish not to take advantage." I ran my fingers lightly across the kitchen counter. Daniel used to stand there flipping pancakes. "You'll need a clear estate review before listing," I said gently. Her spoon stopped mid-air. "What review?" "I requested a financial audit on the estate," I said calmly. "Standard procedure when irregularities appear." The air shifted. "Irregularities," she repeated. I didn't raise my voice. "Large transfers, out-of-state investments, restricted withdrawals." Her jaw tightened. "You're overreacting." "I'm being thorough." She leaned back in her chair. "You don't trust me." I held her gaze. "This isn't about trust. It's about clarity." She didn't like that word. Clarity doesn't argue. It exposes. That week, I met Daniel's attorney at a quiet cafe downtown. He reviewed the documents slowly, no dramatic reactions, just a measured nod. "We can file a temporary hold on property sale pending audit findings," he said. "It's protective, not accusatory." Protective, that word fit better. I signed the paperwork. No announcement, no confrontation, just timing. 3 days later, Ashley called. "The realtor says there's a delay on the title check," she said tightly. "Yes," I replied. "There will be. You did this. I ensured everything is documented." Silence, heavy. Then she shifted tactics. "You're dragging out our future." I folded laundry while we spoke. Daniel's old sweatshirt was in the pile. "I'm preserving Emma's present," I said softly. She hung up, but here's what she didn't know. While she was trying to accelerate the sale, I was documenting every financial pathway. Mark completed the forensic summary. The transfers weren't investments Daniel approved. They were deposits into a development account connected to Richard Hale. High-risk property flips in Florida, some already failing. Daniel had flagged the account. He had started asking questions. That was when I understood something clearly. 3 days after my son's funeral, my daughter-in-law called the bank. 6 months before that, my son had already begun protecting what mattered. Not money, stability. I filed the estate audit officially with the court clerk. No accusation attached, just documentation. When Ashley called again, her voice wasn't sharp anymore. It was strained. "You're trying to trap me." I stood by the kitchen window, watching Emma walk up the driveway after school. "I'm trying to finish what Daniel started," I said. There was breathing on the other end of the line. Then she said it. I needed security. There it was again. Not love, not partnership, security. And she had mistaken access for control. I didn't attack. I didn't threaten. I simply waited. Because when someone realizes the ground is shifting beneath them, they reveal more than you ever could force out. The paperwork was filed. The listing was delayed. The audit clock was ticking. The stage was set. All I had to do was wait. And in that waiting, I felt something stronger than anger. I felt certainty. And certainty doesn't shout. It stands still. Right before the truth surfaces, the offer came in on a Tuesday morning. Full price. Cash. Ashley called before the realtor did. "They're ready to close in 2 weeks," she said quickly. "We can finally move forward." I could hear relief in her voice. She thought the delay had passed. "I'm glad there's interest," I said, wiping down my kitchen counter. "But the estate audit isn't complete." Silence. "What audit?" she asked. "The one triggered by the transfers," I replied evenly. Her tone sharpened. "You had no right to do that without me." "I had responsibility," I said. She began talking fast. They were investment opportunities. Daniel knew about them. I didn't interrupt. When she ran out of breath, I said one sentence. The funds were deposited into Richard Hale's development account. Nothing. Just air on the line. That's not what it looks like, she said finally. Then the documentation will show that. That was the shift. No shouting, no scene, just proof. 2 days later, she came to my house. No jacket this time. No folder. Her eyes were tired. "You're going to ruin everything," she said quietly. I poured her coffee, set the mug in front of her. "You did that yourself," I answered. She looked down at her hands. "I needed security," she whispered. Daniel controlled everything. I folded a napkin slowly. "He tracked everything," I corrected. Tears slid down her face. Not dramatic, just steady. "I didn't think he'd die," she said. That sentence lingered. She hadn't prepared for loss. She had prepared for leverage. The front door opened. Emma stepped inside and stopped when she saw us. "Mom?" she asked. Ashley turned toward her. "Grandma's trying to take the house," she said softly. I stood. "No," I said, meeting Emma's eyes. "I'm protecting what your dad left." Emma swallowed. Then she said something neither of us expected. "Dad told me he was fixing things." The room went quiet. "He said sometimes grown-ups make mistakes," she continued, "and he had to fix some." Ashley's face went pale. "You told her that?" She asked me. I shook my head. That was Daniel. And that was it. The illusion cracked. Within a week, the realtor withdrew the listing. Ashley's attorney requested mediation instead of contesting the power of attorney. No courtroom. No spectacle. The irregular transfers were accounted for in the estate settlement. The house remained. Emma remained. Ohio remained. Ashley signed the mediation agreement without drama. When she stood to leave, she paused at the door. "I loved him," she said quietly. "I believe you," I answered. "Love can exist beside poor choices." That's the complicated part. After she left, I walked through the house slowly, room to room. I straightened a framed photo of Daniel and Emma, folded a sweater draped over the back of a chair, opened the front door to let in fresh air. 3 days after my son's funeral, my daughter-in-law called the bank. She thought she was about to take control. She didn't know my son had already placed protection where it mattered. And in the quiet that followed, I felt something settle in my chest. Not victory, not revenge. Freedom. Freedom from pretending nothing was wrong. Freedom from smiling through what I sensed. Freedom to honor what my son trusted me with. And in that silence, I finally felt free. It's been 3 years now. Emma is 19. She starts college this fall. Same state school her father attended. Some afternoons, she still studies at my kitchen table. The same table where Daniel once sat, turning a coffee mug in his hands. The house never sold. The maple tree out front is taller now. Every spring, Emma hangs lights in its branches, says it makes the yard feel alive again. Ashley moved to Florida about a year after the mediation. She sends birthday cards. Short messages. Careful wording. Emma reads them quietly in her room. Sometimes she answers. Sometimes she lets them sit on her desk for a few days first. I don't tell her what to do. Peace is not control. Peace is choice. People have asked me if I regret stepping in, if it was worth the tension, the whispered opinions from relatives who only heard one version of the story. I usually just smile. My son saw something, and instead of shouting about it, he prepared. 3 days after my son's funeral, my daughter-in-law called the bank. That moment felt like betrayal. But looking back, it was also clarity. It showed me exactly what Daniel had been protecting. Not money, not pride, stability. His daughter's stability. I remember that first night after the bank call, sitting alone at my table, statements spread out in front of me, the refrigerator humming in the background. I didn't feel anger. I felt responsible. That's different. I didn't destroy anyone. I didn't celebrate. I simply held the line. Sometimes strength looks like paperwork. Sometimes love looks like delay. Sometimes protection looks like being the least emotional person in the room. Emma still visits the maple tree when she needs to think. I sit on the porch and watch her, and I think about Daniel asking me quietly, "Mom, would you step in?" He already knew what he needed. He trusted me, and I honored that trust, not with noise, with patience. If I've learned anything, it's this. When someone shows you who they are, when money enters the room, pay attention. And when someone quietly prepares you for a storm, don't ignore it. Peace didn't come in one dramatic moment. It came slowly, in steady routines, in knowing the house would not be sold out from under us, in watching Emma laugh again without fear of being uprooted. That's enough. Because, in the end, it was never about winning. It was about staying. And staying changed everything. Have you ever had to step in quietly when no one else would? Tell me in the comments. I read every one. And if this story reminded you of someone who needs encouragement, share it with them. If you'd like more stories about quiet strength and real-life wisdom, subscribe. You're always welcome here.